Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. All right, looking for a sound check. Can anyone give me a sound check? Oh, we're good. Okay. Okay, good to go. Okay. Good. Sounding good. Ready to rock and roll. Okay. Hello everybody. Welcome to Saturday night's stream. Tonight what we're going to be talking about is a blueprint for fear aggression / protective aggression, which is very, very similar. So looks like tonight, I see a bunch of you are here. Not our usual larger crowd, I guess because of the holidays. If anyone is new to this stream or anyone is watching the replay, I always start off by saying to make sure that you do go, if you're watching this stream, you probably want, for sure, you want to go start off at the beginning of our series. Right now, this live classroom is listed under this menu over here. All right, we hit the plus sign, and we have an Introduction to Foundation Style 4.0, and this is really meant for someone to go in order to get the most from it and to go through all these streams. And really, you don't have to, if you're going in order, you don't necessarily need to watch the Resource Garden blueprint before this one. We're just going to go through some different blueprints. This system, right, it's going to start us off. There is a compass that we go by that is meant so we do not have any loose ends. So, quick review for everyone. Before we do these blueprints, you definitely do want to have a good understanding of the dog and the behavioral problem that we are talking about. And then it's going to also make sense as we work our way up the line through our foundation, which is why this is called foundation style dog training. And to know the basics of how to do a lot of the training exercises that we would need to work on a blueprint. All right. So, who do we got? Someone chiming in here. Sierra. Okay, I haven't caught up to you guys yet. Just happened to be on. Oh, absolutely. That's fine, Sierra. Definitely, it's helpful if you're on. You can certainly watch, but if you have any questions along the way, you'll see a lot of them are answered in the back end. But it's always helpful to watch live, and feel free to chime in with questions. If it's something that's addressed in an earlier stream, I'll definitely let you know. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our blueprint that I have. I stuck this one in our knowledge base as well, and then I am going to go post this video in two places. The recording will go in the blueprint, and it will also go in our course outline if someone just wants to follow straight along. I'll show you where we're going to be. We're going to have a blueprint. If we go over here, and maybe the easiest way, I'm clicking on a little doggy, go back to our home, will be, you can probably just search, it should pop up now. If I even just start writing fear or protective, it'll pop up right over here. Fear and protective aggression blueprint. You can also probably go right to the knowledge base. And as long as you're logged in, these should pop up. somewhere over here. These will not pop up. A lot of our knowledge base does pop up even if you're not logged in. Um, these you'd have to be logged in. And this is what I have. I made this one over here for everyone. And this is going to be best with the stream, if we go along with the stream. So I kind of put a blueprint here similar to the one we did for the resource guarding. I posted a video, an old video. Maureen is on. Maureen, you on? We have Maureen from, this is a long time ago, but I like this video. It's like a whole class that took about, it's about a 20-minute recording, I think. And we'll use this along with the stream. Now, fear and protective aggression. Remember, this is fear and protective aggression are very related. These are dogs that are showing aggression because of they feel threatened. That either they feel threatened or they feel a pack member is threatened. What really separates fear and protective aggression is whether it's rational or not. So if we have a dog showing aggression because it feels it needs to protect itself or part of the pack, they're being protective. You will generally, there's not a lot of standards as far as how we label these things in the dog training world. But in general, when you hear fear aggression, people are usually referring to a dog that's irrationally showing aggression towards things that it feels it is a threat. Where that line, where they cross that line is to where it's rational protective aggression and irrational fear aggression is a judgment call, really. In my opinion, if a dog is in danger or can potentially bite someone that does not really deserve it, then it's probably fear aggression. Most calls that you get are for fear aggression. Me personally, fear aggression was like my bread and butter for many years because a lot of trainers either did not want to deal with it or they did not have a high success rate with it. So therefore, those people with the fear aggressive dogs would still end up there in the pool of potential clients that still needed help or were still seeking help. And so I made almost a full career off of it. So this is something that I know a lot about. And it was actually hard for me to even make like a single, stick it all in a single blueprint because it is so vast. But I put the most important things, and it is something that a lot of people will be needing help on. And I'll probably add to this blueprint, and it's discussed a lot in the forums and stuff like that. So be sure we'll keep adding to this. But I'm going to move along with this blueprint for you. You can see it's it should be very similar to the resource garden blueprint, especially in the beginning. You'll see we kill a lot of birds with one stone if we just stick with a certain formula. So you see when I come back over here to our blueprint, is it of course all starts with ethology, right? We want to make sure that we understand what it is, and of course what it's not. We need to know what it's not, because we may have other layers of aggression that we do need to deal with. So of course, just like the other blueprint that we showed, I have the reference chart. Everything sort of starts off the same way. You could click here, and there's all kinds of references about different types of aggression. Health, we want to make sure, just like all aggression, we want to make sure the dog's on a quality diet, because it can make some subtle differences. Also consider any sight or hearing problems, because if a dog, and I have come across this, where dogs start losing their hearing or they start losing their eyesight and they just get startled more easily. And sometimes that is just the sort of tipping point for a lot of dogs that were a little nervous or kind of aggressive, and now they're getting surprised more easily. So consider that. These are things that we want to consider. Also, consider evidence that may be related to chronic pain or discomfort. Anything could make a dog more irritable, or if it's, I'll give you an example. If you have a dog, it's getting older and its joints are sore, and then suddenly it's showing aggression towards dogs, like at a dog park or when dogs are coming to greet it, and it never has before. Sometimes the dog could be anticipating another dog's going to jump on top of it or hurt its ears, like somewhere it's in pain. So therefore, it's showing some sort of like defensive aggression, or more of an assertive type, because it's anticipating that it's going to be in pain by this encounter with the other dog. So again, consider this in your troubleshooting, because sometimes trainers just do overlook that there could be some sort of health issue that is underlying. I wouldn't say it is if I haven't seen it myself. Just like with all aggression, consider neutering. I say being intact. Testosterone in itself does not cause fear aggression, and there's a lot of evidence that even testosterone, because it can build the confidence and make it less likely that the dog would show fear aggression. But if you have an intact dog that is already also showing fear aggression, for sure testosterone is a turbo boost to any type of aggression. It does the same thing for dogs as it does to bulls, stallions, everything else. If I was taking in a dog into an in-kennel program and it was like a bad fear aggression case where this dog had many bites underneath its belt and it was like a do or die situation for the dog, and I was supposed to guarantee some sort of a results with these dogs, often I would sometimes there were dogs I wouldn't take them unless they were neutered. I was like, listen, you got this 3-year-old dog and it's intact and it has like this turbo boost worth of aggression lunging towards everything. The thing is already fearful. I used to, if I would take the dog in, I would require them to be neutered if I had to have this dog at a certain time and haven't finished at a certain time, because that testosterone could be part of that dog even turning on the owner when it doesn't want to do it, all sorts of things. And we're going to go over dominance aggression, not in this stream, probably just that one in the next stream. That would be a good one to do. But consider neutering. I would never, when I was helping people one-on-one private lessons, I would never require them to do anything because they were paying me for my time and they could work with me as long as they want. They were just paying me for my time, even if it was a little bit more difficult if they were dealing with the extra testosterone. Consider supplementing. I put a link over here. All right. There's studies, and a lot of people swear by this stuff, by supplementing with tryptophan or tyrosine. There is a product out there called Nutricom that a lot of veterinarians prescribe. A lot of people swear by it. It's going to increase the serotonin levels, which just gives the dogs, more of a sense of well-being. And there are lots of studies about serotonin and aggression and anxiety and all kinds of things. So it's something to consider. Honestly, I've never personally really tried the Nutricom or supplementing with this, although I did always use high-protein diets and always tried to stay off the starches as much as possible, which also helps with tryptophan and tyrosine levels. But look, there's plenty of stuff on the site, health, about this stuff, but it's there. All these things to consider. I've noticed when I was taking my worst fear aggression cases, they just happened to be the dogs. A lot of my worst ones were like on the worst diets, like they were like on the Alpo diets, like Beneful, Purina, stuff like that, and they were just on very poor quality food. And I think it was all part of the reason why these dogs had such bad impulse control. But it's nature, it's nature versus nurture with all these things. But we do want to consider that. Next, of course, is We want to diagnose properly, make sure you always let the owner know exactly what it is, what it isn't, that it's fear, that it is fear aggression, the dog is worried, um, and that will naturally bring us to attitude, right? So the reason why attitude, remember, it's in our triangle, it's in our foundation, is we ourselves want to understand the problem, the ourselves really, really well, before we then communicate it to the potential owner of the dog. Or sometimes for some of us around here, because we're just serious hobbyists and we're working with our own dogs. But if we're working with the client, the more we have them understand their dog, we help build or usually change their attitude about their dog, right? Because most people that are dealing with a fear-aggressive dog, they're usually really frustrated with the dog, and they're calling the things like jerks. And I've actually watched videos of clips of seminars that people are doing, some of these like train the trainer seminars and e-collar trainers, and the instructors, as just normal practice, are calling these dogs that show fear aggression dicks. They're like, well, if your dog's being a dick, this is what you have to do. All right, we want to avoid that sort of attitude in dog training, especially fear aggression, because again, it's going to lead people. You usually see this in these quick fix seminars because it's designed to sort of like pump the people up or influence them to kind of cut corners and to be unfair to the dog, because it's not a big deal to be cut corners or be unfair to a dog that's being a dick, right? But you're not going to get the best results that way. So the attitude leads to the behavior, which is taking our time and doing things the right way. All right. Now, next thing, very important, is the management. So I put a list of things here, and this is some starting stuff to consider here, with the management of fear aggression cases. Is, as a professional, I mean really anyone, but as a professional in particular, the moment I answer that phone and I speak to someone, regardless of whether or not that person becomes a paying client, I would always, just for the point of just doing the right thing, is I would at least give people tips to manage the situation so no one else gets hurt. Even without training or without professional training, most fear aggression cases can be managed so that there's going to be no further injury to anyone. And I always felt that that was my responsibility to do. They're not going to have, someone with a, large, strong, fear aggressive dog is not going to enjoy owning that dog that much. If they're just sort of have to manage the dog all the time, they're not going to have as much freedom. But it will buy owners time sometimes if they can't help the dog right away, or for whatever, if it's like a rescue situation, or the dog is in a foster, or they don't have many resources. It doesn't necessarily have to be a money issue. Sometimes it's a time thing where someone has a bunch of dogs that they're holding and a lot are fear aggressive. I want to keep that dog out of trouble. So some of the things that I listed here, and one of the first things that I tell people to do is to get, when I'm dealing with a fear aggression case, is right away one of the first plans I put people on, even if I'm not ever going to see them. Like, listen, my recommendation is, and I'll send them a link to a video or something. I was like, start on a plan to get your dog used to a muzzle. That's number one, because if you can get a dog to accept the muzzle, and even when I do accept someone as a client, I give them a head start on this. I'm like, do me a favor, watch this video and get your dog used to a muzzle, because it makes my life easier too if I have to deal with the dog or deal with the client. So in the blueprint, I put a link to like one video I have training the dog to a muzzle, but a muzzle is going to help right away if this dog has to go like to a veterinarian. It depends, you know, dogs are fear aggressive. We could be talking about usually fear aggression towards people or to dogs or to both. So anywhere where this person may need to bring the dog, where an encounter will be unavoidable or at high risk, they just put a muzzle on the dog. And I always tell people it's better to have a dog bring a small cage with them that's on their mouth, on their muzzle, than leave them in a cage. You know, you bring it with them, and it gives them freedom. Muzzle is the dog's best friend, and it always surprises me how many people are against muzzles. Like they get like offended if you tell them to put a muzzle on their dog. It's looking out for the dog. All right. So that's number one. Next one is doors. Someone's dealing with a fear aggressive dog or a protective dog. I mean, matter of fact, any dog anyone else dealing with this has training a dog in personal protection, because this is all, these dogs are very similar. You know, dealing with personal protection dogs and even fear aggression dogs are all capable of hurting something or someone if they feel that they're proper, you know, that they're threatened, their pack is threatened. Is lock the doors. You know, I deal with a lot of cases of dogs that bite people because we're not expecting certain people to come into the home that may not know that it's okay. I'm not talking about a stranger walking into your home. I dealt with a lot of people that just live in one of those like neighborhoods where, you know, where they have kids and stuff like this, and like people are opening up the door, coming in and out, or a relative comes to visit and thinks nothing of just opening the door to check if anyone's in there, to call in. Lock the doors. You know, you just lock the doors so you get a warning. So the dog, why is my phone ringing? So no one gets caught off guard on anything. Oh, I forgot to put this on Do Not Disturb. Let's see, Do Not Disturb. 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 What did I do? Hold on 1 minute. Let's mess something up. Technical difficulty. Okay, I'm back. I don't know what I did. Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, I think I fixed what went on over here. All right, so locked doors. We want to have locked doors in the house. I say these are just standard. You're doing a consult with someone, you're even doing a phone consult, Skype consult. I say this does not even require working with the dog yet. Next thing is yard, all right? These little things. I mean, this is, we come in, we're preventing things from happening. As a trainer, sometimes you're giving solutions to people. You're not necessarily, everything is not all about doing sit down, come, and heal. The yard, right? Every place where this dog can have a bite, you have to make sure it's secured. Does this dog go run out in the yard to go to the bathroom by itself and there's no fences around here? Do people go out in the yard with their dog and there's no fences? And is this dog not trained to really come and called around distractions? You got to consider the yard. You know, if they do not have a fence that the dog cannot get over, dog should not be in the yard by itself. And if a dog is in the yard by itself, not only should the dog not be able to get over the fence, there should be a lock on the entrance into the yard where the dog is at, or at the very least a latch with a very clear sign next to it that gives some sort of appropriate warning or instructions, you know, of what to do so they do not just enter the yard. I prefer generally a lock, because not everyone could read, or you could have a disabled person, or you can have a kid or something like that. You're looking to prevent the kind of problem that could hurt someone or make someone lose their own dog. There's lots of lose-lose situations if people just put their dogs in situations where accidents are about to happen. You would be surprised how many people that I've dealt with where their dogs have had like 6, 7 bites by the time that they called me. I'm like, how does the dog even get this many bites? Before you call me, I had one client, they had a Bouvier that bit in 14 people before they called me. I was like, how do you even still have this dog? And it was all like friends and family that loved this woman that had this dog and didn't want her to lose it, or she somehow got them to not make a big deal of that. But 14 people is a lot for that to happen. So so what it comes down to is basically not taking chances. When someone has that dog, you do not play Russian roulette. You never do anything like maybe. You don't do the maybe game, to see if I think this dog is going to be okay. If in doubt, you just do not take any chances. All training equipment has to be properly fit. If the dog is, if you're using collars and stuff to bring the dog out, you don't want anything that the dog cannot back out of. Again, I worked with clients, people handing off dogs for me for in kennel training, and they'll have like this big loose buckle collar that if I take that dog and that dog wants to back away from me, it's going to come right out of it. You need to check all these things. You need to make sure anytime this dog is in a situation where it could get into trouble, that collars are secure. If you're using prong collars, halty collars, that you're using some sort of safety connection, like if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can leave a question. But for instance, if I have a prong collar on a dog, I'll show you right here. Guess who's gonna come? Oh, Freya's gonna come. Let me see. Let's do this. Come here, Freya. You wanna be here? Oops, Orfeo. Handsome boy. Come here. If I'm putting collar on him, right, I'm gonna put the prong collar, but then also I use a safety loop. I usually just use these. It's just like a big loose slip collar, right? And then I take the leash. I don't know where his leash went. I'll just use this little moldy thing. It's over here. This tab is I'm gonna hook his leash to this and this. All right. I hooked the both of them so that if the prong collar, these prong collars could pop off, or if they're not fastened. See, even this one right here, it's like, if I wasn't paying attention, it's not, it's not connected. So I always have a looser slip collar that's useless, and it puts no pressure on the dog. But if the prong collar pops off, this grabs the dog. All right, you think you're going out? So I always use something like that, and you do the same thing. Halty collars, most training collars, have some sort of system for a safety. Use it, because even if you think you fasten that thing perfectly, the best you're going to have is a 99% chance that your collars always stay on you. And that 1% that the thing pops or something fails, the dog could potentially get loose. And it may not even be that dog bites someone, might get hit by a car or something. So these are things, things you want to consider, all right? So lots and lots of safety. There's lots of management. When I'm training the dog out in public with a fear aggression case, things I would never forget, I don't have one right over here, is Spray Shield. I put a link to it. Let's see. Over here. Just so you can see. I love this stuff. When I was out in Spray Shield, all right, I would almost always go out Spray Shield. Spray Shield, or it doesn't mean you have to use Spray Shield. It's, this is an idea for you. I swear by this stuff. Like for years and years, whenever I had a client's dog out in public, I always had, all my trainers always had a spray shield connected to them because it protects your fear aggressive dog if a loose dog that might not even be aggressive approaches it and you're out there on the leash and you want to avoid something. The spray shield is harmless. It's just citronella. It blasts, you can blast it really hard right at the nose of the dog, and it'll usually keep the dog away while you could get the owner's attention or get your own dog out of there. It buys you time. I swear by this stuff. I loved it. It's better than like macing an innocent dog because usually the dogs, half the time, more than half the time, the loose dogs really are not aggressive. Sometimes you get an aggressive dog. And then also I say you don't have to worry about a big argument with the owner that you just mace their dog. You're just doing spray shield. And it works. That stuff works. So it was so useful even when I was in the military and I was deployed. We had to, these poor like loose like farm dogs, like on raids and stuff like that, they were getting shot by soldiers on missions doing raids and stuff because these dogs would be protecting their farms and their homes and they would bite. And what I did is I got tons of spray shields sent to me when I was deployed and I gave them to everybody and it worked, and it was better than bullets flying and, and deadly force being used on the dogs, no blowback from mace, stuff like that. So spray shield was one of my things that worked great. If you have like a really super motivated dog that wants to blow through that stuff, probably even like mace isn't going to work on the, on the dog. But to me, that was everything that I ever needed. So always spray shield. Also standard. I was training, doing classes for security dog handlers. And even when I would go out, I would always bring an extra spare leash with me. If this is like what I'm doing all the time, go see if I have client dogs. Because if there is a dog fight, there's some dog that there's just no owner, I can always having a spare leash that you can loop on a dog becomes useful. We won't go into like breaking up dog fights and stuff here, but a spare leash is super, super useful. And if you really, depending on your location and what kind of dogs you have in your area, and depending what dog you are training, it is always handy in a training environment to have a break and stick around. If there's some sort of fight and you have to, and it's with some sort of bully breed that's really game and doesn't let go, break and stick, nice and easy to pop that dog off. Especially if you get a leash attached, you could secure both dogs, stuff like that. So again, I'm stressing this because fear aggression cases, once it comes to the training of it, remember, fear aggression, your job is to prevent bites from happening. What do we got? We got a question here. Just going to say that, a break and stick. Oh yeah, break and stick. Break and stick leashes. These are tools of the trade. Like, your job is to you're preventing things from happening, all right? You're not waving magic wands over stuff. You're going to see with fear aggression cases, the training is pretty standard, all right? It's all this other stuff. I was doing fear aggression cases for years and years, and I use so much safety. It's great that I actually have Maureen on. Maureen, you're on. The only known bite that I ever even had or accident in like 20 years was that time where a muzzle came loose and you were there and Toro got a single bite, like on his leg or something, right? When we were doing something by another dog. I would have so much safety in place that you just don't want anything to happen. You cannot be dealing with bites all the time as a professional trainer. From Roddy. What was that one's name? I think his name was it Max or something, or it was a Roddy, and it was the owner. Yeah, so and that goes into muzzles. The only bite I had was where an owner accidentally pulled off his dog's muzzle. It was a single bite. And then because everyone was else prepared, you have spray shield and everything else in place, and Toro still had his muzzle on, it was able to be broken up very, very easily. So Maureen said there's a nice small one being used by canine handlers. Oh, it folds up and is small, but it works. Oh yeah, I saw that one. I saw that one. That little break, yeah, little tiny break-and stick. It's almost like a little like pocket. Looks like something you'd have like on a Swiss Army knife. The owner grabbed the muzzle and it came off. Yeah, that's what happened. But again, notice we're talking a lot about prevention. Like that's what you're doing. That's why a lot of people are scared of fear aggression cases, is because they think there's all this liability involved and stuff like that. It's about being a step ahead of the game with everything. Now, even if you're taking in, and this really isn't on the blueprint, I should put this here, but I do have, I think I even have some photos. Even taking in aggression cases, if you, when it's your own dog, it's easy, right? Because fear aggression, they're aggressive towards things they're fearful of. So when it's your own dog, it's actually pretty easy to start training and working with a fear aggression case. As a professional trainer, there's two things you're dealing with. You may take the dog in as an in-kennel training dog, where now someone has to hand off this dog, and if it's fear aggressive towards people, you have to take this dog that's likely wants to be aggressive towards you. The other scenario is you have to go do a house call or work with someone that has a fear aggression towards people, right? The ones that fear aggressive towards dogs are easier because at least you can get in there and you can work with them, and it's pretty standard. Like what you do with a person, you're going to be working. You can do with a dog, right? Maureen says, yeah, always need to do equipment checks, muzzles, collar, harnesses, etc. I had a failure with my harness, and Mally got Mike Ritlin good. We were doing sleeve work with her. Yeah. Check the equipment always. That's everything. Yeah, protection training. Anytime you fear aggression, protective aggression. We're dealing with dogs that are assertively coming out to bite. So make sure everything is in order with these dogs. I can show you, let's see, I think I actually have some photos on this page over here. Quick tips, right? Probably do video. To do a video on these is when I would be taken in. I mean, it's actually really easy, right? If I was remember, fear aggression, if it's just fear aggression, they're aggressive because they're scared. Once the animal's not scared, they have no reason to be aggression. So if I was taken in an in-kennel dog, it was really easy. Ideally, that's why I say the muzzle is so important. If you can get the owner, even before you take a dog, to get the dog used to a muzzle, I mean, if you have to, it's not that hard. Because remember, this dog is usually not being aggressive towards the owner. If you have to and they don't have time, you can always have them flood, right, and just pop that thing on them, make it secure before they hand off the dog to you. When I was taken in kennel training dogs, I usually, after I got the information about the dog, I wouldn't need to see the dog. If I knew the whole time I saw the dog before the intake, it was mostly just going to be lunging at me, I did not want to work the dog up and have the dog have all kinds of mixed, emotions about what I'm about when I'm trying to like take information from the owner. I would have the owner keep the dog in the car, in the crate, wherever in the house, where if I was going to pick the dog up, I did not have to deal with that fear aggressive dog. The first time that I'm going to see that fear aggressive dog, if I'm going to bring it in, is usually the dog has a muzzle on. And if the dog does not have a muzzle on, it's not secure, I'm wearing protective equipment, and I have the owner do a leash transfer to me. And some of this we could go over in another video. It's not that hard. And then the owner is out of the picture. They get in your car, go, leave the training room, wherever it's getting dropped off, or bring it right out to the car. Because right away, some of those dogs are more aggressive and worked up, because they also feel responsible for their owner. And then two, once the owner leaves, they're on their own with you. And right away, everything changes. Now they have to, all their motivation changes. Now they're worried, their owner isn't there, they don't know where they are, they're taken away from the home. They usually may do some lunges at you, but you're protected. You stay calm. You never act aggressive to the dog. I see these people get in the fights with these fear-aggressive dogs right away. It's completely the wrong message you want to send. You just stay calm. You take the dog. And those dogs, you don't try to pet the dog. Those dogs generally calm down within like minutes when they're with you because they see you're not trying to hurt them. Um, the really, really fearful ones, I would just take them early in the morning, keep a muzzle on them, and just hang out with them all day. I'll just hang out with them all day, eat my lunch, do my texts, do whatever, work on the computer, and just hang out with them on the leash until they start to calm down and warm up, and you feel the dog out. I'll put them in and out of the kennel a few times with the muzzle on, make sure that they know that they're not worried about me reaching for them, things like that. And usually that's the way you get started with the in-kennel training dogs. Because remember, fear aggression, it goes away once they're not fearful of you. You're dealing mostly with all these numerous new encounters they deal with every day where they're showing aggression right away. If I'm dealing with a fear aggressive dog at like a shelter or something like that, that's what I was doing. Someone would hand off the dog to me, would have a muzzle on, or I would be protected and be using the leash in such a way that the dog really couldn't get to me, or I had on, protective equipment, and I would just hang out with the dog, take the dog for a walk. Take the dog for a walk, don't touch the dog, don't pet the dog, maybe take some treats, throw it on the floor every once in a while, so the dog just knows I'm not there to hurt them, get the dog back in the kennel. If I was like in a shelter environment and I wasn't going to be dealing with the dog the rest of the day, someone else was, I was putting the dog back in the kennel, usually throw a handful of treats back into its kennel. The dog's pulling towards it, unhook it, let it go in, close, and that's the end. So as soon as that dog starts wagging its tail when it sees me, I know I could go to the next step. All right. So fear aggression dogs. I used to love fear aggressive dogs because it's just the beginning is easy. The dog's just getting used to you in the beginning. When you're doing house calls with someone in the fear aggression cases, there's two ways I would deal with it. One, I would just same thing. I wouldn't force myself upon the dog. If it was safe and I felt the dog didn't need a muzzle, it was like a smaller dog, I felt someone could handle it, I may just like tell the owner to take a dog for a walk with me, and we just walk around the neighborhood, and we just kind of walk parallel with each other. I would get information, talk about the training, or I would just sit way out of the range of the dog's space and instruct the owner how to train the dog. And I would occasionally throw treats and stuff like that. And through a couple of house calls, the dog just gets used to my presence and knows that that's the reason why I'm there. If you want to speed up the process, there are, you have the option. You can be like, listen, could we take a couple of sessions where I just hang out with the dog and I walk the dog and you spend an hour with the dog? You could charge them for it, and you can still come and give them information or then come back and you could speed up the process. But you have to remember the heart of it is the dog is scared. Once the dog is not scared, and it does not take much, all that you can be there to be the teacher for the dog, but you never beat up these dogs. You never get into a fight with the dog, because then you will prolong this whole process of trying to get the dog used to you. You do not want to do that. You're not going to get the most from your dog that way. All right. So remember, there's a lot of safety considerations with the dog. Let me get back to our blueprint over here. Okay. Now, wow, there's so much, but it doesn't seem like much, but it's the same foundation, right? Leadership, all right? You need, and this is why you just don't go into someone's house, start beating up their dog and get them, try to get them to listen to you. Leadership is very important, all right? It is cultural. We're talking about ethology. Dogs, if they understand you as a leader and you know how to play that role, I put a link over here that gives some good tips and a refresher. Is if you play that role, it's actually they naturally take to your leadership better once you want to show it, or once you want to kind of show a sense of authority. You want to exercise your authority. There's not as much resistance, and dogs 100% react differently to people. The dog can absolutely not be fearful of you, and if you don't have a right relationship with the dog, that's why I do not take the leash from owners if they have, like, I've dealt with plenty of owners that have like Rottweilers and German Shepherds that were adults, and They were fine with my presence, but that did not mean that I took the leash from them and tried to demonstrate stuff. Because if the dog did not see me as like a leader, because I was not living with them, I wasn't providing, I wasn't doing these things, I was just a visitor. Even if I was doing everything exactly the same, I'm prone for the dog to bite me or to attack me. Be like, who the hell are you? All right. I'll do stuff for mom, but not for you. And we could all relate to this, right? We could take orders from someone who we see as an authority figure, or as like a parent type figure, but not from someone that we just consider like an equal or something. It is important. It is true. And I've seen this plenty of times. Early in my career, I was actually thrown off guard. I wasn't expecting. Some dogs, I haven't even seen them act aggressive, and then someone else takes the leash and tries to do something exactly the same, and the dog shows resistance. I also learned this when early in my career I was training security dogs, where matter of fact, I used to take dogs and train them in the basics, and then they would get, I was working for someone else at the time, then they would get sold to a company, and they would have all these handlers handling this one dog, depending on which shift they were, and the dog knew all these handlers and would work with them. And then like I would see them a year later for a recertification of how to handle this dog, and the dog, I was training these dogs and they were like 18 months old. I'd see a dog at 2.5, didn't know me anymore, and the dog was fine at my presence. I'd be like, oh, here, let me demonstrate how to do this. I would take the leash, and as soon as I would try to do something with the dog would attack me. And I'd use my leash ninja, fend the dog off, be like, oh, all right, that's not going to work. And that's happened to me a bunch of times where I had to like, okay, all right, this is understandable why the dog is not going to do it. But the difference is leadership. They were dealing with the dog is being handled by people that are taking the dog out, providing for him, or feeding the dog, doing things like that. And more so in the home with one person. So do the leadership. If this dog is used to leading the owner all the time, they are going to be fighting Mother Nature and are only going to be using force to try to get this dog to do obedience, and the dog is likely to come back at the owner and to discipline the owner when the dog really feels that I know better than you, all right? This is a danger. In their mind, they think something is a danger, and you try to stop them, they are going to correct that owner and be like, no, I really think that this is dangerous. Step back and let me do my job. I have this role. So you cannot allow that dog to lead the relationship, and the owners need to know that. It makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference, and it needs to be done. All right. Habitation in our play. When we go down our thing, housebreaking, everything. It's always going to be better, even though it seems like it doesn't make a big difference, if that dog is trained to the environment well. If the dog is not grabbing things that's not supposed to, or up on furniture and beds, the same sort of stuff, that leads right over to leadership, from leadership. If they know what they're supposed to do in the house and they have rules, it's less conflict even with guests that are in the house, all right? You do not want the dog thinking that it owns things or is responsible for things or could pick up things, or a guest comes in the house and they take off their shoes, and the dog's going to go pick up the shoe, then the person tells the dog no, the dog attacks the person. If the dog is well behaved in the home, there's less issues, all right? Now getting to the nitty gritty of the training. All right, so it's a lot of stuff. So I'm going on 50 minutes here. It's a lot of stuff here. Real basic. The more training you do, the better with the fear aggressive dog, basically. Because fear aggression dogs, they're actually kind of easy when you have the right training with them. I put stuff over here, some minimal training. Proper leash handling is a must. And if no one has seen like the Leash Ninja video over here, you really should see it. I mean, I put it in the, I just put it straight in the knowledge base. It's, you need it. You need good leash handling in order to control the dog. Because with fear aggression cases, I always tell people, and this is true for all dogs, but when I would do my classes, all my group classes that I've always done, I'd always deal with a lot of fear aggression dogs. And I would tell people, that this is what your priorities are. Before forget about obedience training in the beginning. The first thing is actually just understanding situational awareness. That's the first thing I teach them, is understand the situation you are in and how to avoid something bad from happening. All right? Where are you standing? Who is around you? Who can your dog reach? Who can reach your dog? Is situational awareness is number one. Before you go around that corner, can an accident potentially happen because your dog is out in front of you or someone could come around that corner? Situational awareness is number one. We teach this. I'm saying, and these programs you do with people, it's not, the obedience is just the tip of the iceberg of what you're doing. Number two, I tell them, is leash handling. It was like, you need to be prepared from day one that you take that dog around people in situations where it could get into trouble. You have to realize that no training or obedience or dog is 100% reliable. But if your dog decides to lunge or something like that, do you know how to handle that leash where the dog, you can plan ahead and you know if that dog tries, they're not going to be able to reach their target. And you can very smoothly and calmly get your dog back into the position it's supposed to be. Leash handling, I do leash handling like first, usually lesson number one after a consultation. Once I start doing like hands-on stuff with the owner, is I'm doing leash handling. Super, super important. Then number three, I say, is the obedience and the training. And you need to stress with fear aggression is one of these things where you need to stress the difference between management, training, and rehabilitation. That they are three different things. And if you know the difference between those three things, you can get the most out of that dog. And those dogs end up with the right combination of knowing when to use what and what's the differences. These fear aggressive dogs become like more presentable than your average typical untrained dog. I have done demonstrations. Maureen may have gone to some with me where I would ask some clients, oh, here, this place wants to do a demonstration at some like dog event. And our table with all of our fear aggressive dogs were more presentable and more obedient and in public than all these like other dogs walking around with some like really basic training. So that's because management is what it is. It's like management, the management plan is big. The management plan involves no training. It just involves knowing how to manage that dog to keep it out of trouble. Now the training is what, really where most of your labor comes into. Training is teaching that dog new exercises, right? Like commands and alternative things to do. We use the training to help with the management, right? And that's not what you're doing with fear aggression. Is if that dog lunges at people on walks, you can train the dog to heel on a walk. And heel means no lunging, all right? So now that is technically managing the dog, all right? Where the dog may still be fear aggressive, but we're telling the dog in this situation, I told you to heel, we're walking past. If someone else has that dog that does not know how to handle the dog is probably still going to lunge. So that does not mean the dog is rehabilitated, right? People use the word rehabilitated as in we're going to make the dog not aggressive because it's fearful. That does not happen that often, although it happens in certain degrees or it's usually part of it, all right? Rehabilitation is truly without the training, without the obedience, without all this management, the dog is not, if you say you rehabilitated a fear-aggressive dog, it means the dog really is, if someone's handling that dog, it's going to act like, with good judgment, like a typical dog. And that would be rehabilitation. Remember, so rehabilitation usually happens when something damaged the dog psychologically from a point that was once normal for the dog. The dog was not fearful, and then it got attacked by other dogs or had a bad experience with people, and now it's fearful and it's reacting aggressively to it. Then you rehabilitate it to get it back to a point where it's trusting. That would be rehabilitation. Or you will get dogs that were beat up by a trainer and now like they're more reactive. Rehabilitation is usually part of it. in my experience, genetics was the main reason my dogs were fear aggressive. Secondarily was it's how it was raised and its environment, but it's nature versus nurture. But usually genetics play the biggest part. But you're you're going to do all of these. You're going to do management, training, and rehabilitation. So for training, some of the things I put here, and these are just the necessities for most of them, but the more the better. I put down heel. I put, because a lot people want to take their dogs around. A lot of fear aggressive dogs are dealing with dogs that are reactive on the leash and they're lunging at things. So a good heel, meaning all these are phase 3, meaning the dog does it because it has to, all right? And if you mastered how to get the dog to do it, even if they don't want to, all right? We heel the dog, we need the heel. This is actually a new thing that I really started doing towards the end of like my group classes is switching. It's very helpful because this is part of managing. Someone's walking the dog down the street in a heel, and you're using the heel so you can walk past other things and keep the dog out of trouble. And you want that dog to feel like it's in a nice little bubble with you and it doesn't have to worry. But sometimes, if you're walking, you're on a tight sidewalk and you have to walk close to someone with another dog or something like that you don't trust, and you're just going to be passing dog to dog, it is nice to teach that dog a command just to switch to the other side. Basically, heel on the other side, even if it's just for temporarily. Like I like to walk the dog on the left side, but a good switch to the right side, even just as I pass by something, for a few seconds, 20, 30 seconds, and then I switch the dog back, is very helpful in making the dog feel comfortable so you do not have to reach like a breaking point in the dog where the dog is now more fearful of what's going on a few inches from it, than being obedient and the good things about obedient to you. So you can use it to make it less likely the dog is going to lean over to that side of the spectrum where they're more worried about what's going on than just responding to you. A good leave it. Now I put leave it and look. I mean, you could use whatever commands you want. I'm teaching you the concepts and why these are so useful dealing with a fear aggression case. A leave it means to disengage from anything that it's focused on, meaning whatever your dog happens to have its ears forward, focused, and its mind is focused on. Whatever its mind is focused on, leave it means disengage. All right? A leave it, it's the same command structure as everything else. Name, command, leave it. You praise the dog when it disengages, and everything is an automatically remain in that state until you give them something else to do. All right? Leave it is forever unless you cancel it out with name okay and you look and point. And we saw some of that in the phase 2 videos with Darcy. We did it, right? On like a lower level. Now, so the leave it is good. It is excellent for those times where like someone's just in the yard with their dog or they invited someone into the house, especially after I have place on here too, or any directional thing. Where you send the dog somewhere, you give them an alternative behavior to do. Instead of rushing the door, not let someone come in, their job is to go to the place. All right, and I'll show you a video too. Some of this stuff is to go to place, and there they can at least, because you're giving them direction, they have to look at you. Now they have to pay attention to you. If they're busy rushing the door, they cannot even see that you're okay with the situation. You put them into a place, and now you're in between them and the door, all right? They can relax a lot easier, and you could do counter conditioning, you could do all that good stuff. And then once the dog calms down enough, someone's in your home with a muzzle on at these beginning stages, when you release that dog, because you may not want the dog to sit on a placemat for 2 hours if the person's going to be there for a while. If that dog still does not seem okay with that person, you could take a huge load off of that dog by just telling them you don't have to stay there and you can do whatever you would normally do in the house except for engage with this person. And you can give them a formal leave it towards a person in their home. All you got to do is wait for their ears are forward and they're coming to sniff or check out, and and you just say off limits. Rex, leave it. And if they disengage, good boy. If not, they're getting the same punishment you would do for anything else. You know, if a dog didn't come or anything else. The same phase 3 type of punishment. Leave it until they disengage. And they could do anything else in the world. They could relax. You can interact. You could call the dog over. You can give the dog love. If you can send the dog back to its place, you give him something to do. All right? That's what a leave it's for. It works in the yard. They're in the yard. Someone's passing by, and the dog's acting aggressive. We use the same thing for like territorial aggression. You say leave it. It means disengage. They cannot look and point their ears towards them. They could do they could focus on the million other things in their environment. The butterfly, the bug on the floor, you, anything except for what you said leave it for. It comes in super, super useful. Then the next thing is look, or a similar command, which means to look at you. Now, I use this differently from leave it. I use leave it if the dog is already engaged with something, all right? And it's going to be something that might be in the environment for a while. Look, I use if I don't want the dog to even notice something in the first place. If they don't have, you can't say leave it to something the dog hasn't noticed yet, right? This comes in great. I'll give you an example. I was training like a fear-aggressive dog in New York City. And you walk this dog down the road, and it's constantly passing by there's so many people walking dogs in New York City, right? So I would use look. When I was passing by another dog, and there's always like little terriers and stuff walking around, and they're all eyeballing all these dogs. When I would see one of these dogs come in, the dog already knew a good heel. I taught the dog a heel. You could stack this on, just like you could put a dog on a climb command and then tell them to sit, all right, when they're on there, or, you know, or climb and then down. You know, you can have a dog heeling and then tell them to look. Or you could just be sitting and then tell them to look. You could stack it on top of something else. And what I would do is, as I would notice before the dog would notice, because they were generally focused on me already, if I wanted extra focus from the dog, I would say the dog's name and tell the dog look. And you train the dog same way. We could do instructions how to do it, but it's pretty easy to look. But I would praise the dog. I'm going to give the dog treats. I'm going to make the dog enjoy looking, but then they also have to look, right? And then it's usually for a few seconds, something passes. The dog didn't even get to notice there was just another dog eyeballing them. Remember, fear aggression is mostly, it gets exasperated visually, all right? Some dogs are going to get triggered by sounds and they hear dogs, but that's usually secondary, or that's usually like a conditioned stimulus, all right? They hear like the chain of a dog walking by, and they're conditioned to associate it with like a dog. Usually what gets the dog most fired up is when they see things they're fearful of, whether it's a dog or a person, you know. They see a man and the man scares them, you know, as opposed to like a kid or something. Or they see a dog with its tail up walking down the road, or they see a dog eyeballing them, or they see any dog and they get fearful of. But usually the vision gives a chain reaction and makes everything, you know, worse from that point. And that's why even in group classes, when you're working with these dogs, it is good if you want to see these dogs in group classes. It is always best if you have large environments and you have visual barriers. You could just set up blinds where you can do some exercises with the dogs behind the blinds while they're around other dogs, and then bring them slowly around the other dogs. Visual is going to be a big deal. So there's a difference between like a leave it and a look. And of course, come, sit, place, post. Like if someone's in the yard, you could train the dog to go to different areas. And so therefore, when we get into these exercises, I'll show you a video too, is I give some suggestions, all right? Go to place or various posts, depending at the door, heel when passing potential triggers, leave it, look. Various exercises that involve different presentations of triggers that the dog would encounter in everyday life, especially interacting with people or the dogs. I'm going to show you a couple of videos. Remember, fear, aggression, but this is the base. Everything you're going to see, it follows the same pattern. You want to keep things simple when training the dog. If you understand the psyche of the fear-aggressive dog that it's scared. So it's deciding to take control of the situation, and it's working on instinct. Majority of the time, it's just a quick trigger of something we bred into the dog, that we wanted the dog to do that, but it's just doing it at inappropriate times. So everything follows the same pattern, right? We teach these dogs all the exercises we want the dogs to do. We teach them without distractions. Phase 1 style, right? You go back, phase 1 style. Then we teach them that discipline is involved, and when it happens, phase 2 style. Usually around mild distractions, all right? So we can do it. Then we do phase 3, which is you have to do it, all right? Is you have to do it. And the best way to do it is you do it at a distance where you could be successful and the dog could be successful, and you bring them closer and closer. Now, as the dog is making the right choice, it's competing motivators, right? You're really doing it because you want the dog to be less worried. It comes down to they need to be less worried about what's going on over there and more worried, technically. You know, like, if we're to be honest, they have to be more worried about the punishment. That does not mean it has to be harsh. It just has to be, I know if your timing is right and stuff like that, and they don't like the punishment, is they don't want to get the punishment, but then the punishment shows them that you're going to give them extra good things. You save, and that's why that leadership is so important too. It establishes operations. You're controlling the food, you're controlling everything. So the only time they get that chicken now is when you're practicing around it's fear aggressive towards dogs. You're doing that first, you go, I would use a park where I could create all the distance I want from dogs, and there were plenty of dogs there. I would wait till I knew that I saw that dog notice the dog, and I would right away call that dog into a heel, and that's when the chicken would come out. And I would walk with the dog, and I'd praise the dog, praise the dog, praise the dog. But if that dog broke that heel, perfect timing. Its body, it looked at the other dog, punishment, but then right back to me, good girl, good girl, good girl, good girl, chicken, chicken, whatever type of reinforcement schedule you want, and then you eventually thin it out. And in that process, it is helping to actually teach the dog that there's really nothing happening. There's really nothing to be scared of. And everything sort of happens like this, and the dog gets better and better and better compared to, you know, they kind of, it's a self-rewarding behavior when they act aggressive, because ultimately things go away, nothing happens, things like that. Let me show you a couple of videos. This is an old part of an old clip of an old video, and these were all, I mean, these are old videos, but to show things, I stuck with things that worked, all right? This video is a clip, I gotta probably turn down the volume on my own laptop so we don't have echo over here. Whoops. Dropping stuff, sir, or fail. This was two of these dogs in the room were very fear aggressive towards other dogs. The other ones were, let's see, it doesn't matter. They're all doing the same thing. But these are dogs that were in program for basically fear aggression. Let me clip over. Old video. Now, if you notice, with these dogs, they're healing. I mean, I'm praising them a lot. We're giving them feedback. The one that looks like a little lab, that one was a fear-aggressive one. Its sister was along for the ride. But notice I'm not letting her even look at the other dog, but I'm praising her. So things like healing, I mean, I would do behind the left foot so it's more comfortable for them, but I was constantly giving them feedback. And this is after the dogs had a lot of training. It wouldn't be this close, and it would be on leash first. But notice that the dog, the little dog that's on the blue bed too, is a fear-aggressive dog. But that little yellow lab thing, I didn't let her really look at the other dogs, but I was getting praised. And there's also little warnings that we do teach, when we go into the heel. When we would ring doorbells, we would automatically send them to a placemat. That's what their job was. These were just a lot of little routines we did. I get this little dog over here, and we did heel. And as soon as she's on, same thing. I'm kind of demanding attention from her, but she's enjoying herself. But staring at the other dogs is just not an option. And that's why I would do these patterns. Why I always got a lot of progress with the dogs by putting, dog to dog and me on the other side. Whoops, that was the end of that clip. And things like that, what it does is, like, that's sort of an example of, what it should look like. Is the presentation is the dog should be focused on you. Those same dogs, the training is only as good as the handler. With the wrong handler, where the dog's just allowed, if you just walked that dog down, that dog was from New York City, that little dog, that dog would lunge at everything. And if you, even with all that training, if I brought that dog home, just handed it to someone, the dog was going to lunge. But if the person is trained, when they say heel, heel means heel. And see, the dogs look happy, and you're going to make it a good thing. And she's expecting, they run a very thinned out schedule at that time as far as reward, that she's going to get a chicken, maybe a little piece of chicken when she passes by a dog or something. The more and more they do that, they're really going to get better with that. And they're going to be managed. But the handling, the dog is only as good as the handler. All right. And that's why I always loved private lessons more than in kennel training, because the owner grew with the dog. When I would do those in kennel cases, I would always tell the owner, I'm just doing the labor of the training, all right? You still need to know how to train the dog, all right? And how to maintain the dog. So those owners still got a lot of lessons. I was just saving them lots and lots and lots of hours of labor of training the dog. Now here, we're not going to watch this whole clip, I have very old clip showing presentations. In this video, let me see. I'll talk. I mean, this is a long video. Definitely not gonna watch the whole thing. I put it on the end of your blueprint over here. Is Let's
do greeting. Let's do Mike. You do greeting with Rory.
All right. This was an aggression support group class. And there goes Maureen with old Toro. This has to, who knows how many years ago this was. So Toro had difficulty with dogs, right? That was Rory. She was fear aggressive towards dogs and people. Milo was dogs and people. These were all. I'm trying to see if. Oh yeah, the dog over there. Oh, what was that one's name? He was fear aggressive. Definitely very fear aggressive towards people. It was all fear. There's a little Shiba in here. These were all fear aggression cases towards people or dogs of different degrees, right? But things to stress here is leash handling. See, we're showing these dogs presentations. The training is where it's at. Like, all the training was done and is then used to guide the dogs. So here, what we have are dogs with muzzles, safeties on. Are they this loaded up with all this kind of stuff generally when they're out in public? Not necessarily. But for teaching them things, it made it safer, so we can have these types of environments with the dogs. So in these kind of classes, doesn't mean you need to do a group class with this. It just means that this is example. You can watch this video and show the kind of things that you can do with a client. Oh, here we go. And it's very, very repetitive what you want the dogs to do with the owners, because you use the obedience to then show this is what your job is. When someone approaches, you sit behind my heel. I'm going to shake hands and nothing is going to happen. All these owners are prepared what to do if the dog does break. That's why leash handling is so important in these cases. If you go back and I show, we go all the way back to the Leash Ninja video. Over here, you can see Mike with Milo. Milo, right in the beginning of this video, you will see leash handling. What would happen, I took a clip from one of those support group classes where we triggered, not after this, not after this, right after this. Let's see, right here. So right here, we triggered. These dogs didn't like each other, and with the proper leash handle, and everyone in that class was prepared what to do. They're trained how to handle the leash in case the dog does break. So you see what happens here if Milo breaks, right? And the other dog breaks. They just knew what to do, and they knew how to do it calmly. So you teach those kind of things inside of your classes for fear aggression cases. It's about management. You're making it impossible for the dog to mess up. You're really making it impossible for the dog to mess up. And then the dogs just get better and better and better, because every presentation you could think of that this dog is going to encounter in real life, you make them successful, and you reward them for it. All right, you reward them for it. And I was such a fanatic about fear aggression and seeing how far I can go with these dogs. Even in that video, the video I have with Maureen, and it's dated because I uploaded this to YouTube like a couple years ago. But this video itself is very, very, very old. I pushed it much further than even necessary. In the video I put in here just to show you, all the dogs are also being pet by people that normally a majority of these dogs would have like put in a hole in someone's hand if a stranger pet them. And so I was doing an easy command, I would call it. Easy, I would teach the dog through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It just meant when they heard easy, it started off with people the dog was familiar with, that the dog could succeed. That when they heard easy, it just meant someone was going to touch them and they were going to get a reward. And it started off with people that they knew and were comfortable with. Then we would do, it's over 10 years ago, probably 12. Yeah, it's a long time ago, Maureen. Yeah. So this just shows... like this, I've been doing this, and I continue doing things very similar. And the modifications I've made through the years were mostly because I found out that it was almost over. You can do so much with a fear aggression case to the point where it's almost overkill, right? Like I stopped standard. I used to have all the dogs standard. I wanted people to touch them and all kinds of stuff like that. I stopped doing it after a while because it was just like overkill. It was like, in my opinion, it was if you have a fear aggression case, it's better to work on teaching your dog, don't worry, no one has to touch you. And it was easier to do as a trainer, easier for the handler to do. We would do these same cases, and I switched these drills from teaching the owners how to say things, how to like block people's hands if they reached in to touch their dog, and just say my dog doesn't want to get pet. And it actually puts the dog at ease even more when they know they don't have to deal with it. They don't have to deal with it. And I'm not telling you what to do. I mean, I'm giving you ideas, like blueprints that I've used. So I've gone both ways. I favored through the years, I think the clients liked it, it was less stressful, to do all the same kind of things here, teaching the dogs that this is what you do in this situation. And if you know your dog does not like to get pet by people, you teach the dog you don't have to be pet. It's like having a kid that doesn't want to be hugged by a stranger. Don't worry, all strangers don't have to hug you. You don't have to worry. You don't have to hide between my legs. You don't have to run away. Just sit. That's what your job is. Matter of fact, I'm going to give you love, and I'm going to give you a treat after I'm done interacting with the client. That's the way that I liked it. I thought it was more respectful for the dog. But just to show you that anything's possible with all these dogs, we did do an easy command. I used to do it standard with a lot of dogs. Oh, no problem, Jerry. Hi, Jerry. I got my volume off. I don't hear the things come in. Okay, I hear people coming in. So in those cases, I would teach an easy just like any other command, where they would learn it in a way that was easy, that they would get treats afterwards. And then I would do things like not that difficult for the dog to be able to deal with, like the dog in a sit and maybe someone just brushing them quick with their hand like on their side, and the dog getting rewarded for afterwards. But then if the dog would start showing a reaction, I would punish him for it. We'd give like a little nick or something and just say easy and then praise the dog. And then the dogs would be like, okay, I can't do that. Someone's touching me. It's not that big of a deal. I'm going to get a treat. I did it because at that time, I don't know anyone else that tried it or did it that way, and it was not that bad. You could see we're kind of doing it in the group class. I don't know how many dogs actually get punished for it, but it was as easy as doing any other exercises. But again, I stopped doing that, but it's on there because I didn't find it was necessary. But I'm just showing you that you can. And also, I didn't feel it was the safest thing. I was like, am I really going to have, Mike with Milo, the Rottweiler, walk down the street and have a stranger pet Milo? I was like, no. I'd rather train him to not do with it. And everyone I worked with fear aggression cases that just let their dogs not need to get pet by anyone, they did fine. And then what I felt worked better is allow, if the dogs are obedient and they can behave around people that they're not that familiar with and would have been lunging for, once they kind of get used to the person's presence, and some of them they start to, if it's going to be someone in the dog's life often, and you can see the dog isn't that fearful, then you allow the dog has a muzzle on, call the dog over, pat their leg. And if the dog wants to come over and has the right body language, right? We all studied body language at this point. Then they could pet the dog and they could create a relationship. And it's not that hard to get other people in the dog's inner circle, if it is nothing other than pure fear aggression, right? If you have a very dominant dog that's prone to dominance aggression, you may have some other issues going on. But I'm just talking pure fear aggression over here. Is that's the way that I would, do it. And like I say, these dogs, even this is around this time, we used to cut these dogs all off leash. We used to call it muzzle park in the yard. All these dogs that would normally fight with each other and everything else, we'd cut them off leash. And we would let them, if we saw good body language and they wanted to interact, fine. If we saw bad body language, we'd tell the dogs to leave it from that particular dog, all right? And then if an accident happens, and so that was the only accident I had that we talked about, was not that, a different Rottweiler that used to come to classes in Toro, got into it over something. And it was like, okay, I guess they don't like each other, and it was just normal, just pulling the dogs apart, and when the muzzles came loose, we had a single bite. But even that muzzle parks, you do what you feel is necessary. I felt if someone knows their dog is not a social butterfly, we just respect it. Keep the dogs out of dog parks. Let the dog interact with the dogs, that it gets along with. Right? Our idea is to give people better lives, not try to prove that we can turn their dog into like accepting of everything and turn it into like a dog that was bred to be like a therapy dog. We're just looking to give people solutions here. Last thing I want to deal with that I want to talk about is, and then I can answer questions, is some things to consider that I put here. Well, mostly the main one. I put safety equipment that is useful, mostly for getting the dog used to people. When you're not used to a dog, it's always good to have safety equipment in these cases. But personal protection. It sounds crazy that someone may call you up because they're having a problem with your dog being their dog being aggressive, and then you're talking about personal protection training with your dog. It is, personal protection. I'm trying to think, even in this class right here, like Milo, we did personal protection. A couple, I think, him, Toro. There was Fritz. That used to go to classes that he started off as fear aggression towards dogs mostly. And then he would just fall asleep in class with dogs there. He didn't care after a while. Did personal protection with him. Personal protection training. This video is not about personal protection training or how to do it. But to plant the bug in your head that it's great. It's worked out great for me as an outlet for people with fear aggressive dogs towards people. The reason why is because two things. One is it does show contrast to the dog about what is really something to be worried about and something that's not really a threat. You gotta remember, people have dogs, they're coming to you with a fear aggression case. A lot of these dogs are starting off, they're showing the signs of this, they're under a year of age. They haven't even been on Earth for a year to even know what really is threatening and what's not threatening. They're making just bad judgment calls, all right? They're making bad judgment calls. So you focus, like those dogs, I usually spend that first 2 years showing them that the world's a good place, right? And you're practicing on control, 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 control. And then once the dog is old enough to do personal protection, usually like 20 months of age or something is usually the earliest. I'm not talking about tug work and doing bite building. I'm talking about real personal protection training. Usually by 2 years of age, the owner has control over the dog, and you start formal where now you show the dog, look, I'm going to give you this command, and someone is going to beat up your owner, all right, and start beating up on it. And I have, and it's tons of fun. Wait, hold on. K9-1, just to kind of show you. Let's flip over here. All right, and then, you know,
Make their dreams come true this holiday season. Save 30% on your first order today. Shop for your pet's favorite toys and treats at Chew.
and then you start doing good old Danny. You know, then you let them see their owners getting beat up. All right. Oh, good old Toro. Toro's in all my old videos. We're filming all this stuff. See, now the dog can see, oh, this is when I'm allowed to bite. All right. Now that is a completely, you know, different presentation than I say. It's about presentations. All right, the dog sees handshakes, greetings, stuff like this over and over and over again. Then you show the owner getting beat up. Then you throw a command to it, right? It's like before the owner gets beat up, that's when you give the command, whatever you want. Watch him, owner gets beat up, right? Watch him, owner gets beat up. Now you say watch him, the dog can act aggressive, and the owner's praising them for once. And then you say the dog's name, give him a command to sit or whatever, and now they're getting a presentation that, oh, okay, people are shaking hands, they're doing stuff like that. You're showing the dog contrast. And also, you're having the owner practice controlling their dog when their dog is being aggressive. And it just builds their confidence. So now, even if the dog makes a bad judgment, when the owner's not ready, they're so used to practicing going from one mode to the other with their dog. They're so good at handling the leash. They know their dog so well. I cannot think of any time I've had a dog that went to a protection class that got into big trouble with, like, you know, may have been something somewhere. I can't think of anything serious ever because the owners knew their dog so well, knew their triggers, that they just had, their dogs were safer than the same. If you took a clone of that same dog without any training, the dogs were like 10 times safer, all right, than if they never had the training because they did it. And that's why the personal protection, you know, it came in. And if you're a professional and you offer that, so Kim says, so through protection training, it creates clarity for, oh, absolutely. So it kind of provides a situational context to times it can express the behavior. Absolutely. I have seen, like, I've had dogs just become so much more stable through the protection training. But the trick is, I do not do it unless the owner first, I have a handler that trained the dog. It's like the dog is already trained in all the control, phase 3. They have, it's a high level thing. And that's why my protection videos, the reason why, like, I haven't gotten noticed, a lot of people even on the site, the reason why they even noticed me is through my protection training videos. It's because my protection trained dogs are the examples of just my most obedient dogs. It's usually, there are a million videos of dogs biting people, like on YouTube and stuff. The thing that always made my video stand apart is the control that the dogs had. It's because the owners would practice so much control before they were allowed in the classes that the aggression was just, we let the dogs just do what was natural, and the rest of the time they were controlling the dogs. And I could put on, a lot of you saw them, I could put on all kinds of videos to show off where he had dogs walking around off leash, biting, coming off, dealing with multiple attackers and stuff like that. And it's because all the control. But it shows them, right? It's like a dog that was, I was on, texting with Courtney earlier today, right, about one of her clients, a German Shepherd, just chasing after its tail for hours, right? Like, put the dog in a field with some sheep. Let the German Shepherd circle around some sheep for some hours, all right? And then it's going to be much more clear to the dog why, like, chasing its tail is really not all that fun, compared to sheep or whatever. It's like you're giving them something to do when you're showing them contrast, and then you give them something else to look forward to, and it's like I said, it's going to be not big of a deal. I would assume the same thing happens even if you take something like a dogo, right, and you're taking it boar hunting all the time. It's probably, if it does that often enough, it's probably not as excited about playing like with tugs and stuff like that, right? Because it's doing the real thing. It gets to do the real thing. But it definitely helps. But also for the owners, I think it helps. Even if someone could make an argument that it doesn't make a big difference for the dog, for me it has. The owner gets so much more practice handle. But in all my drills that we would do with protection, I'll show you another one. All right, this is all just, let's see. Attack on command. Let's see. Let's go here. I mean, I could show you tons of examples. Oh, hold on. If you watch this video, I can listen to this whole darn ad. All protection training includes a mixture of petting of being nice and then turning the dog on. So watch this. Alright, it gives clarity to the dog. And the owner gets to practice this stuff too. Same thing. Oh, who's this? Is someone else petting?
Good. Do another pet and easy.
Let me see. Let's go to a new dog. What's the same thing? The same dog? Yeah.
Alright, good. This one will be on you guys. Alright?
What else we got? So, see, this is typical from our personal protection classes that we would do. It wasn't just, we were actually practicing just as much control about good presentations, and we would bring it to the next level too. We would have the person even argue. We would do a lot of arguing with the owner, and the owner would tell the dog, let the dog know this isn't time to be aggressive, and then we would also act non-aggressive, and then the owner would then tell the dog to be aggressive. All right. So let me see. So you can see this is over and over. I mean, same thing. And you can see this is same drill with lots of different dogs. Petting. And then owner gives command and the dog will be aggressive. Alright. This dog was serious fear aggression case right here.
It'll be
Now here,
on you.
if the dog was a real fear aggression case, we're not even petting this dog, I don't think. The dog just has to remain in control. Some of those other dogs are just protective aggression. But Brody, he was a fear aggression. We just wouldn't really pet the dog. But we could have pet him if we pushed it. If we wanted to do those drills, I just decided it wasn't important anymore. But all these dogs, including Brody, see, it's just over and over and over again. Oh, this is a fear aggression case. See, he was pretty significant fear aggression case. Same thing. It's all the presentations that he had to do before he entered protection training, shaking hands, and then they allow him to do it, and he just gets to be praised for it. This dog ended up getting, this is early in this dog's training, he ended up getting very good. He was one of my favorite dogs to work with as he got older. This is very early. Let's see, I haven't seen this video in a while.
Yeah, for now, say his name
What does
first.
he do? There he goes. That dog became very fun to work with. But those are, I'm showing you, that's kind of where you can go with it. Fear aggression. Oh, let me see. We got another question here from Ken. You said, is this an outlet only? What are the repercussions for the dog doing this in public? Are they required to register as aggressive dog? Oh, no. Nope. Not at all. Matter of fact, I used to call, technically on contracts, if I was like doing it in kennel and working on this stuff, I would call it aggression control. I wouldn't call it like attack training. This is aggression control. I didn't train any of those dogs to be aggressive. They all are aggressive. We're just controlling it. And that's why I always presented it. Even personal protection trained dogs, when I would sell them, I did it for a brief amount of time, the contracts, they were trained in aggression control. And the owner was trained how to use their dog as part of a defensive plan. You know, they're not attack trained dogs. I mean, it's because, I mean, it's, and you're not lying to anyone when you say that, all right? Those dogs, all those German Shepherds, all of them are aggressive without training. We're just controlling it, right? There's not one of them there that does not bite on its own, or if you, at that age, if you attack the owner or something like that, wouldn't act aggressively. So there's no need to register them or anything like that. The thing that what does get dogs into trouble, where they do get like put like in databases, is when they have bites that they're not supposed to. All right. So in these cases, these dogs, they actually are safer. The owners are so good at training them. They know what triggers them to bite. They know how to predict. They know how to communicate to their dog. Even if they're having someone's talking loud to them, they have practice controlling their dog. So the dog knows, no, it's not time to be aggressive. And I was doing it for years and years and years and years, and never ever had a problem. And as a matter of fact, dogs, they would have bites, then they would come do the training, and now not have bites at that time. So I mean, it probably depends on local laws, but at least around me over here, for me, it was aggression control. You know, I would call it bite club, and we would do stuff. But technically, anything in writing that I would do, like in training contracts, it's aggression control, is what it is. Does that answer your question? And yeah, and like these, we did this. I mean, these classes, I mean, those we were doing here at first. Those old ones, we were doing it at a Paladin Center where they train, you know, they do all kinds of personal protection, you know, training there, and you know, classes for people, you know, to learn how to shoot firearms and things like that. So it was all part of protection plans and home defense that we were doing it for. So like I said, but I guess it depends, you know, where you are. But just from like the perspective of, if we don't think about the legality of it, if we just talk about like a case study, I've been doing those classes for a long, long time and never had a problem with those dogs. But I was always very strict about who can go into those classes. I've had people wait like a year to get into those classes. You know, I was always so picky about it. They had to have control of the dogs. They had to be responsible. I've kicked people out of the class for what most people would think were kind of like even dumb reasons. All right, you know, because I felt they were being risky. You know, with how they managed the dog. Even the dog, you know, dog didn't have any bites or any bad bites. I kicked people out before it happened if I didn't feel they were being responsible, how they were managing the dog. Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah. So it's gonna, you know, it's gonna depend. I know, in Australia, there's is she on right now? Sharon, no, not Sharon Eula, or other Sharon. You know, was involved with classes, doing protection training with her dog. I'm not sure. I forgot what part she's from, and you know, and she would do it. But the protection training, I say it is an out. It can be a potential outlet if it's legal in the area that you are, and also a reason why. This is the other thing from a business point of view. I've had dogs in those classes. There's Fritz. Oh, he wasn't in the other class. There's one dog, Fritz. I mean, this dog was coming to classes for 10 years, you know. You can keep clients a very long time when you have outlets for them. You know, when you have outlets for them to get better and better and better. Games type in. This stream's going for a while, so I'll answer questions. You know, I mean, this is a big. I'm thinking though, even if there's not any questions now, people will have questions, you know, on it, because we do deal with a lot of fear aggression. You will deal with fear aggression. So these are just some things I put out there of how I dealt with it. I mean, I have lots of footage of dogs that were fear aggressive. Most of my videos, even like some of those old training videos, were dealing with dogs that were fear aggressive. Here in Texas, you have to have a guard dog trainer. Really? I didn't know that, Maureen. You need a guard dog trainer license. Well, you know about me and like licensing. I'm like working. I feel strongly in it that people need to be qualified. I do believe in it. I definitely do believe in it. As with the site's definition of aggression, even behavior such as barking, growling, or even staring may be interpreted as aggression if it is ascertained to be part of that canine's progression of behaviors. Will that lead to bite? Australian local councils have registers for complaints in relation to this type of progression, especially as it is so contextual. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's lots of things to consider, you know, and all I can say for sure is that for fear aggressive dog, I've done lots of them and it made them safer. It made the owners happy too, and I haven't had. But it has to be done the right way. So regardless of what the law feels about it, a lot of people are owning German Shepherds and Borbals and Cane Corsos, and like they're buying these things, and they don't know how to control what's natural to them. And the training does not create the aggression at all. Everything about the training is going to be controlling it. No different from controlling a herding dog's instinct to herd. You're telling them when to do it, when to stop, everything else. Same thing with a police dog, you know, when to chase, when to do a call off, when to not do it. So it is what it is, you know. But from a legal point of view, like that's, you know, I'm not going to be an expert in that, but I can tell you what has worked for me. I mean, it's a small percentage of the fear aggression cases that go to do that. But the ones that go that far, I've never had a problem. And And they end up, I mean, I have this dog, Boone, right? He's in some of my newer videos. We have professional video. We actually had my new video guy. We should end up having like a little like clip, kind of like my last video, you know, the confessions of an abusive dog trainer. We have, we did a lot of footage, and there should be like a little kind of like episode on him, where here's a German Shepherd. He's a show line German Shepherd. She just wanted a pet, and he's very aggressive. He was very aggressive. This dog would attack anything. It wouldn't matter. It could be Mother Teresa. It could be Girl Scout. It could be anything that he saw from like any distance. He wanted to attack it. And he had veterinarians want to put it on meds, not working. One guy coming over, jerking the dog with a prong collar, and like, you know, someone doing treats. And then I did training. I did control work. And when the owner showed she had control, we did protection training with the dog. And now, not only is the dog safer because she control, we could show tons of videos of that dog, Boone. She has such good, I mean, she has such better control of his aggression because she practices it all the time. And that dog was born aggressive. There was nothing that we did to make that dog more aggressive. Everything we did was to control. He was biting people anyway, you know. So we never created aggression. It was just all control. We were like, do what you do naturally. And now, you know, now shut it off. And it's made the owners, I say a lot of, you know, we're offering a service. You're offering a service usually to someone, and you're making them happy. You're making them appreciate the dog. You want them more likely to keep this dog instead of euthanizing the dog or putting it down or giving the dog away to someone who also doesn't know how to control the dog, and then the dog ends up getting bitten. But in a lot of these cases with these aggression control dogs, none of these people are using the dogs offensively like vigilantes, you know. Everyone, like at least here, no one's going to get in trouble if their own dog bites someone who's attacking them, you know. So even all the drills that we would do in those classes all involved someone trying to attack the owner. We wouldn't even do police type drills like chasing people down. It was always defensive practice drills. Let's see. A lot of people get around it by doing it under, sport training. Breeds, especially a PSA pop. Yeah. Jerry took... Yeah, so like I say, that's whole... You know, it's a cool topic, but I mean, I think that's why we need regulations of who could really do it, you know? Who could really do it. You know, so lots of things could be, you know, because there's people doing personal protection training that'll take any dog, you know, someone could come completely irresponsible. They won't have any control over the dog at all. They're clients, and they're encouraging this dog to bite, and they're not coaching the people on safety, nothing, or any kind of control. So there should be, I'm all for that it should be regulated. All right. Oh, thanks, Kim. All right, I guess I'll start wrapping this up because we will. I will do streams on personal protection training, but this is very related to it. I mean, fear aggression and personal protection, it's related. And some dogs, it's just there's such a gray area between dogs that are just protective and have no guidance whatsoever, and dogs that are truly fear aggressive. That are just completely just irrational about who they're showing aggression towards. But it's control. I mean, the biggest difference between controlling a fear-aggressive dog and personal protection is one little command where you're telling them, okay, you're allowed to do it. That's really it. And then you're going right back to the same control that you trained the fear-aggressive dog for the person who just wants to completely control it. You're just telling them when they're allowed to do it. That's really the only, and practicing scenarios. That's really the biggest difference. All right. So, okay. I'm not going to be back until we have a holiday over here. You know, so we're having Christmas and then New Year. But I'll be back on the 2nd after New Year, which is a Wednesday night. And I think I will go into dominance aggression. We'll talk about blueprints for dominance aggression. That sounds like the next best one to go with. And then after that, I think should be continuing just to stream on Wednesday nights. These Saturdays are going to start getting cut out. And it's going to be Wednesdays. I'm going to continue with these Wednesdays with the blueprints. And I'm just going to keep going. All right. Stav says, do you still do class at the Carmel location? Probably in the summer. You know, I've been working so much on these, and I've been teaching. You know, so I've been teaching trainers so much now. So during the day, I'm at the career school, and I want to post that. I had Nate come to the career school. I mean, we're doing some amazing things right now, like in the career school. And this is where I'm hoping to go with it. I mean, I have 50 students that are all going into the animal field, and I've been spending weeks and weeks of them teaching them operant conditioning, classical conditioning. They're training and shaping behaviors on rats. I had Nate come in with all the training equipment, and I do worksheets, and everything he's doing, I'm having them label. We did protection training, him picking up keys, everything. And they're labeling, you know, all 4 quadrants, what's going on, where's the classical conditioning, right down to me getting beat up in the bike suit, out in the yard, you know, where's the positive punishment, where's the negative reinforcement, teaching unbiased training for the future. So I'm doing this in that career school, and I love the way that it's going, and I like doing this here, and I would like to see other people start holding these classes that I was holding. But I get the itch for it too, you know. Like I love the protection training and stuff in particular, but I'm kind of getting stretched thin with all the classes. So for now, it's probably right now at least into the summer. I haven't decided what I'm gonna do, you know, in the summer as much, but I want to have some kind of fun in the summer. But I don't know how sustained I can do it. But okay, all right, yeah. Have a great holiday, everybody. If you have any other further questions, you know, just put them in the classroom. I'll stop this stream because it's going on 2 hours. Oh yeah, I'll say hi to Nate for you. He's been having fun. He's doing great. All right, everyone, have a great New Year. And I'll be back the 2nd, Wednesday the 2nd. We'll do dominance aggression. All right, good night, everybody.